burnout, you're emotionally exhausted, you have detachment, and you have a lot of cynicism. So you don't feel attached to your job, no sense of gratitude. There's no fulfillment that's going on. So you just become detached and cynical.
Hi, skin friend. Thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode of The Skin Rail. This week, I am thrilled to have such a dynamic speaker and guest and friend, Dr. Tamara Beckford. She is a board-certified emergency medicine doctor, and she is also a well-known speaker and author and CEO of Your Caring Docs. And really, one of her goals in life is to help address burnout, especially in the physician workforce. But burnout is not just something that physicians deal with. Really, so many professions are dealing with: the financial industry, the tech industry, up to 70%. I could not believe that statistic. And I'm going to throw it out there, mothers are burnout, right? I cannot be the only one that sometimes feels helpless and struggling and overwhelmed. So whether you are a professional in no matter what industry or a stay-at-home parent who is struggling with burnout is real. The stress, the anxiety, the world we live in, there's so much going on. It's so easy to feel helpless, despondent, and feel like, really, is there anything we can do, that we have lost control? And so I love that Dr. Beckford is going to come on and she's going to share with us some of her tips and pearls for dealing with burnout, how you as a person, an employee, can deal with it. And then some suggestions for managers and CEOs and companies, what they can do to help make sure that they are retaining the best and brightest in their company and not having problems with retention. Now, I know this is a skin-focused podcast. You might be wondering, why are we talking about burnout on a skin-focused podcast? But again, I'm all about skin health as a reflection of our inner health. And that includes our inner physical health as well as mental and emotional health. And when you are burnout, when you are depressed, when you have anxiety, when you are stressed out, your cortisol levels are high, inflammation is high, and your skin is not going to be healthy and vibrant and glowing. And so it is so important to address these other issues that are affecting your skin, right? Skincare is so much more than just slapping on a cream or wearing sunscreen, even though, of course, I'm a big fan of that. So if you are in a demanding job or any career where you feel like you're struggling, maybe you are experiencing some symptoms of burnout or not sure if you are, you're definitely not going to want to miss this episode. Dr. Beckford, thank you so much for being here. I have been dying to have you on the podcast. I had so much fun when I was on your live, and thank you so much for returning the favor and coming on my podcast.
Oh, I cannot wait to be able to soak in all of this stuff on the Skin Rail. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Mina. I think we're going to have a great time, and I hope your audience is ready for a great ride.
Oh, yes, we are. Buckle up, everyone, right? Well, so I introduced you earlier, but I would love to hear in your own words. Who are you? Who is Dr. Tamara Beckford? And what do you do? What does she do?
So, as you mentioned, I'm Dr. Tamara Beckford. I am, by training, a board-certified emergency medicine physician, and I'm also the CEO of Your Caring Docs, where I really help and I talk about burnout. My goal is really for us to be able to overcome burnout, to be able to have, for those of us who are working in the industries, to be able to work without feeling burnout or even finding ways to avoid or reduce that. And so that we can increase our productivity, and we'll be able, for those who are leaders, you'll be able to have a team that's highly productive and decreasing the turnover.
And that's important no matter what field you're in, right? You help a lot of doctors because that's a big area that doctors, kind of our stage, sort of mid-level, are feeling. But I'm sure people in tons of professions are feeling this burnout.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We hear about it in the healthcare profession, about burnout, and especially during the pandemic. There's so many of us that, went through burnout or still going through, because it's an evolutionary thing, right? It's not like a one time. And I'll say that other industries are finding the same thing as well. The tech industry are roughly 70% of those who are tech industry are feeling burnout. So if you are a woman there in the tech industry, we feel you. Our heart goes out to you because we know that you are definitely under a lot of strain and are probably at a high risk of burning out. Education industry too. These are the people who are taking care of our kids. We want to especially provide a lot of care and support for those in the education industries because we're with our kids, but they're with our kids for those of us who are not homeschooling. They're with our kids more than us. And roughly 44% of K through 12 teachers are feeling burned out. And sometimes they want to leave. And, some of you might have had your favorite teacher just be like, "Oh, I'm done. This is just like, I can't take it anymore." So we really want to be able to find ways to help with those who are in the education industry. And then finance, our finance industry, roughly 40% of those in the finance industry is also feeling, the effects of burnout and, wanting to leave or even feel like, hey, I need a change. I need something to help me not be in the zone of burnout on a consistent basis.
Wow. So those numbers are astounding. What are the numbers for doctors? I don't know. Did you say that?
No. I didn't say the numbers for doctors. I know I brushed over it like, yeah, we get stressed and burn out, but here are other people. But for us, it's in the 40s too. So according to the CDC, it says 47%, but then some of the others like AMA or so, we're up to like in the 60%. And if you really think about how we feel, the 60% feels a little bit realer than 47% of us really going through burnout and even those who want to leave. And I think that that's how you and I met in a wonderful program that we're in, a coaching program together that really offsets and given us a little bit more of autonomy and freedom so we can stay within this industry that we love, stay, being able to provide care for all the wonderful patients that we take care of. So there's so many things and, burnout is a multifaceted factor that causes it. And, for us in healthcare, we are still there and, we aren't immune to this thing of burnout.
It seems like you keep hearing the great resignation, or people will lament like, we can't find anyone good. No one wants to work. It used to be millennials and millennials don't want to work. And now I feel like we're done bashing millennials and now it's Gen Z. They don't want to work. What is burnout, right? I hear this word all the time, but what is it? What does it really mean?
So I went all the way back to Sesame Street when it came out to burnout. Yeah. I'm like, burnout is brought to you by the letter D. I remember Sesame Street. So the letter D. And there are three facets of it. By definition, you have depletion, which is the emotional exhaustion. And, burnout, you're emotionally exhausted. You have detachment and you have a lot of cynicism. So you don't feel attached to your job, no sense of gratitude, there's no fulfillment that's going on. So you just become detached and cynical. And then depersonalization. So that's when no matter what the impact that you're having on those who you're taking care of, those who you're serving, the job that you're doing, like for those who are in education, they said, we believe the children are our future, but you are so burnt out that you do not even feel like you're evoking any type of help to those who are there, even though you are. So we'll say like, hey, you're a great teacher, you're doing so well. My daughter or my son is in your class and oh my God, they love you so much. But that person who's in burnout, they don't feel that impact that they're having. And that's depersonalization. So the 3 Ds, it's detachment, depletion, and depersonalization. So that encompasses what burnout is by definition. But the other thing about burnout is that it goes in phases. So it's not that today I'm great and then tomorrow I'm burnt out and then I'm feeling great by the weekend and I moved on. That's not how it goes. It's a gradual phase. So the first phase is the honeymoon phase where you are excited about what you're doing. You feel like you're going to have a great impact on the world or on your field in general. And then the second phase is that you start to have the onset of stress, which is fine. We all have that. And, sometimes that's due to some unrealistic expectations, either by employers or employees. You stepped in and you feel like, I'm going to change the world tomorrow. Yeah, that's kind of an unrealistic expectation. So that's the onset of it. And then you'll have chronic stress, where now you're starting to exhibit a little bit of these symptoms where you're having tension headaches, you're having some upset stomach. In addition, and then even like for those who are in the skin reel, you start having like acne, like, it starts to really just come out. And then you're in the third phase the fourth phase, pardon me, is the true phase of burnout, which is the detachment, the depersonalization. You're cynical. You start saying, hey, it is what it is. Everything, you just have no joy. And then you start to exhibit a few symptoms that might mimic or start to transition you to a little bit of depression. You might notice a few of those. And then the crisis mode sometimes mimic the depression. And what I usually say, the reason why I talk about burnout and the reason why I want to discuss it at length and, go on all these platforms is that I feel like the crisis mode is a bridge to the mental health portion. So you start hearing things like helplessness and hopelessness. And, for those of us in the medical field, we know that those are words that are usually used when you're talking about someone who's depressed and someone who just feels like it's not worth it. Now, it's one thing to say it's not worth it in my job, okay. But if you start to say it's not worth it being alive, that's where we don't want. And that's why, we do and we talk about burnout and why we feel like it's such an important topic.
I love how you broke it down to those 3 Ds. You said depletion, depersonalization, and let me make sure I got that last one. Detachment. Yeah, totally. And it's like, it's one thing to be burnt out from your job, but then if it starts to leak over into your family life, your personal life, if it starts to make you feel like you shouldn't even be here, it's devastating. It can really affect so much more than just your job. So I love that people like you are talking about it and bringing this to light because it is such an important thing. And I'd even say, we talk about this with jobs, but what about moms, right? Like, I feel like mothers can totally get burnout, right? You don't get that outside gratification that a lot of us get from work, or I should say validation, right? And so if you're listening and you don't work outside the home, like, you can still be burnout. You can still have all of these feelings. And sometimes in some respects, it may be harder because you don't have people like Dr. Beckford coming to your company to help.
Absolutely. Stay-at-home mom is one of the hardest jobs out there, which is why a lot of us are not doing it. Let's be real, the stay-at-home moms. And when we talk about burnout in its truest form, it's really in its truest form, it's talking about the stress and the ongoing stress that's due to your job. The stay-at-home mom is a job. But here's the thing. That's a job that you're not leaving. Like, that's a job that you're not like putting it aside. You never clock out. And so I feel like stay-at-home moms, yeah, they're at like, a high risk of burnout. And sometimes it can feel like a thankless job, which is a challenge, right? Like, you're here, you're nurturing the next generation because that's what you're doing. You're developing them, you're putting them in a state where they can be successful in society. And you're managing that. You're doing finances because you're managing the finances of the home. You're doing home management within itself. And you're probably teaching. You are teaching for these first few years. You are teaching. And it can, like you said, feel like a thankless job because you're balancing that. You're balancing they're going to get their shots, like who's going when, going to the sports, and food, because these people just need to eat all day, every day.
It never stops, right? And yeah, like the teaching goes on, always, right? They're always looking at you. And I have a really, really supportive, wonderful husband who does a lot of work at home, where we divide things, we try to, right? But I'll tell you, the mental load of the schedules and all that still falls on me to keep track of all that. And it's a lot and it's exhausting. So yeah, for all the moms out there, whether you work outside the home or not, like, this is important. So, like, what can you do if you're having some of these feelings? Like, what do you recommend that someone does? Because sometimes it feels like, what can you do? Or sometimes it can feel helpless.
It can feel helpless to be in a state where you find yourself going towards burnout. Either you see it coming at you, and you're like, I see this coming. I recognize the signs, but I don't know what to do. Yes, there are a few things that you can do. And a lot of it starts with depletion, detachment, and a depersonalization. It starts from mostly a lot of your autonomy has been gone. A lot of the joy has been sucked out of you. So really start back by finding some things that can bring that joy back. And there are ways that you just need to infuse it or sprinkle it into your day. And really just, if you think about it, a lot of what happens is because you're doing things for everyone else, but you have now neglected putting yourself first or even infusing in your day things that make you happy, even including the stay-at-home moms, right? So what are some things that made you happy? Think about it. And I used to tell people, like, think about like when you were 7. I feel like that's like a magic number. Like you're young, you're still a child, you're old enough to know a little bit better, but you can still be free to do what you want. Societies hasn't imposed their kind of mindset on you. They're trying, but you still have a lot of freedom. So things that you did during that time, was it reading? Did you like to run? Did you like to draw? Like, what is it? And sprinkle a little bit of that during your day. The other thing you can do, like when you feel yourself going into a portion where the stress is really infusing and it's going really high, there's a technique that I have taught even during my workshop, which is called the pause technique. And the P is literally to pause. The A is acknowledge the stressors. What is stressing you out at that moment in time? If you notice like a really infused stress, is it, oh, I have this deadline that just got thrown upon me. I did not expect it. And now I have to like ignore all these other things. And now I have to think about this deadline and get it done immediately. Okay, that's acknowledging it. You understand, how is it affecting you? It's making me feel anxious. I'm just feeling like I can't breathe. My brain is now in shambles. Okay, so set a self-care goal. What are some things that I do? Okay, things that help to relax me is a breathing exercise, or you know what, maybe I need to take a quick walk, or hey, maybe I need to listen to a song that really just puts me in a great mood. Either puts me in a mood, it changes my mood from anxious to calm, or from anxious to energized. Like, think about it. And then you set the time and said, I'm gonna go ahead and spend 3 minutes or 4 minutes or 5 minutes in this mode. And then E is execute. You do it right then and there. And with that, you're able to really use that technique to get you from that high state of anxious or, wherever that level of stress is, to bring it back down to a level where you're ready to manage and you're ready to conquer whatever is coming at you. So that's one thing that I really love teaching people, the pause technique. Of course, breathing exercises help, yoga helps. If those are your form, then you can use that as the S portion, which is a self-care goal. And I think that those are some great ways. Now, the other thing that's also important is one of the huge factors when one is dealing with burnout is that they feel like they're alone. And because then they can start isolating themselves. So socialization is so important. So you need to be around like-minded people who like to do the things that you like to do, that can get you through those periods of time, right? Get you through those periods. And also remember that the mind is mostly going to be in a negative state. So maybe if your circle is a circle of people who are always thinking negative, then you need to move to a circle of people who are thinking positive, because your brain will automatically be thinking negatively. So you need to move from there and you need to work against the resistance to infuse positivity. Another great thing to do is you can do a morning routine, which I think is a great way to start your day. A great morning routine. And I call it like a wake up routine because some of us, I work nights. So sometimes my routine is the middle of the day. It's like 4 p.m. But the first part, it starts with the quote unquote night before, where you intentionally our cell phones are like our appendage. So we put that away within like either another room. Some people put it in their bathroom.
I have to put it in another room.
If not, you turn into the snooze queen, which I was a snooze queen. Oh, 5 more minutes. Oh, 7 more minutes. Oh my God, I'm late, right? So you start with that. And then the next thing is that when you do get and turn off that alarm, you don't go onto social media immediately. You infuse into yourself. So I call this pour positivity. Is it a podcast that you like to listen to? Is it a book that you like to read? Is it some way that you meditate? For those who are religious, are you reading like some of your religious books? Are you reading quotes that are inspirational, affirmations, like everything you're pouring into yourself first at the beginning of that day? After that, then you can do some movement, either stretching or walking, whatever movement it is. And then you can go ahead and read the news, read those emails. But the difference is that when you've poured into yourself with strengthening your mind, strengthening your body, you will now look at the news or the email that's telling you forgot to do this and how dare you, or how dare you, blah, blah, blah. You look at it from a different perspective. You're now responding to said message versus reacting to the message. And it makes a big difference on how the rest of your day goes. Because when you respond to it, you respond and you move on. When you react to it, you perseverate, like we call in medicine. You're thinking about it over and over. And you might think about, I sent off this email this way. I should have said this. I wish I'd said that. And, now it's lunchtime and you're still thinking about it. It's the evening, you're still thinking about it. But when you respond, you just move on and you go on. So it really helps to empty your mind and to keep you in a state where you're literally reduced stress.
The morning routine, this is something I only in the last maybe year or two really tried to get into, because I would say I'm a night owl. I like to stay up at night. And then my husband and I would start watching a show. And then, of course, you go, let's 10 more minutes, right? Like it just happens. And then I get in bed, scroll on my phone, one more check of email. And then, of course, like it just takes one post or one email to kind of stress you out. Then I had a hard time sleeping. I'm going to bed too late. Then the alarm goes off. I'm tired. I hit snooze. And then I would start my day running, already stressed out because I'm running behind and I'm late and I'm tired and I don't feel good. That's a terrible way to start your day. I mean, terrible. Your day, it's already starting out at a bad place. So, I think what discouraged me about some morning routines in the past was that I'd hear, you got to go do a cold plunge, or you got to exercise for an hour, or do these like really extreme things. And what I realized was like, I don't ever want to do a cold plunge. I don't care if it's good for me. That's not my jam. I will never get up if I know that I have a cold shower waiting for me. At least at this point in my life, I don't want to do that. And I also don't love to do intense exercise in the morning. I'm much better doing that in the afternoon to kind of wake me up. It doesn't have to be these extreme things, but what it shouldn't involve is social media and checking your email. And that's one thing I think if you're dealing with burnout, your email, your work email is probably stressing you out a ton. And I now have these really rigid rules on my work email, and it's hard because it's on my phone and it's right next to my personal email. But I really have to tell myself, I don't care if I see their 9 unread messages. Like yesterday was a holiday and I was like, I'm not checking my email tomorrow. And people have my cell phone if they really need to get in touch with me. But those work emails, especially if you're dealing with burnout, you're going to read something. It's going to stress you out. It's going to put you in the wrong frame of mind. And then to your point, you're going to react to that email instead of saying, I'm going to respond in a couple hours when I've cooled off and I'm just going to respond. It's not going to be a reaction. But yeah, that's one thing I find. If you're struggling with burnout, really set limits on when you're checking your emails, because I find I used to check it just, reflexively, right? If I had like at a red light, check the email, something may have come in. Like, no, it's not that important.
And, we have to also realize like we have control, but we've given up so much control, especially to a lot of technology. And all of this is chemical. And, so I recognize, this might go into like a little nerdy portion of our conversation, but let's just be honest. These are all dopamine rushes. And once you get a dopamine rush that's, this is basically chemical reactions. And I started looking at life. I'm like, this is just another chemical reaction that's going on in my brain. It released a dopamine rush. And then it makes my body feels good. And so it stays in that mode. So when you are stuck reading that or that post And then you're on these reels and then a reel after reel after reel. And this, especially in the middle of the night, like, oh, it's 12. I should go to bed. Oh my gosh, this was a really funny reel. And the next thing you know, it's 12:30 because your body's in the state of like this chemical reaction that it's infusing this dopamine and you want more and more and more. So, when you see yourself there, you have to try to pull back and get that autonomy and that control and say, okay, I recognize what this is. Okay, I need to just stop and put the phone away, right? Same thing in the morning. I recognize what this is. Stop and put the phone away. I recognize if you accidentally pick the phone up and you're opening that email, close it. Why? I recognize what this is. Stop and put it away and infuse all the positivity into yourself first. Build yourself up for the day before you let anything else enter into your day.
Get your mindset right to start your day because stuff's going to happen throughout the day. So you got to start at a high, right? And you would think with all the technology we have and all the things that are supposed to make life easier and simpler, why are we working harder and harder? What's going on with that?
I think that what's happening is that things are supposed to be simpler, but then there are now changes to what's considered simple, right? We have a lot more connection and also, which is why boundaries, this like you've made clear what you just mentioned, why boundaries are so important. So life, even though it should be simpler now, we're working harder because the boundaries have been flood open. I have access to you all the time. So therefore, I'm going to send you a quick...
Yeah, please stop calling me at 2 a.m., Dr. Beckford.
Exactly. Well, Mary, Dr. Alice, I just came up with this great idea and I have to tell it to you now. I can't wait until 9 a.m. No, I want to tell it to you now. And that's how our minds work. It's just on a consistent roll and process. And we feel that everything's an emergency. Everything needs to be done immediately. And that's when we have to take the reins in and say, well, no, what is urgency and what's an emergency? They're two different things. And what is just something that can really wait until later on and categorize it in our mind.
Sometimes some people's emergency or urgency, it doesn't have to be your urgency, right? It's because they've waited or they feel like they're in a time crunch. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to also be. So yeah, I think boundaries are one thing that have just been so blurred. My husband works from home and boy, working from home, it's really blurred because he doesn't have a start and stop time. He needs to be more disciplined on that. And even as physicians too, my answer was always, well, I need to be available for my patients. And my patients have essentially 24/7 access to me. I will say most of them are really respectful of that, but every now and then I get a call on the weekends about scheduling. And I just let them know that that's something to call back during office hours and the front office would be happy to schedule. But yeah, just making sure you set those boundaries up. And of course, there are going to be times where your boss does need to reach you or you do have to do something maybe after hours. But I think as a whole, we need to get better that, hey, I'm not going to check my email after 5 o'clock on Friday. Call me if it's really an emergency and I'll check back in on Monday or whatever your work schedule is like. But that's one area where I feel like we have to do everything and we have to do it all at once right away. And that can be really stressful. I love what I do. I don't feel helpless and all that, but I've noticed that at the end of my workday and I'm running around from 7:30 to 4 nonstop, barely take a sip of water. And I'll go to sit down at my desk and I'll open up my email for the first time. And there'll be dozens in there. And so already that makes my heart kind of beat faster. And then I've got 60 some notes I got to sign and that makes my heart beat faster. And I've got text message I got to look at. And I've recently noticed I can feel that anxiety in me and I need to do your pause technique. I need to just feel it, take 60 seconds, take 5 minutes, breathe, eat, take a bio break, maybe do some stretching. But I've noticed that I get a lot of anxiety at around 4 o'clock, 4:30 when I see all this stuff that's been waiting for me. And I just need to like take a minute and realize like I'm going to get through this, and whatever I don't get through, I will address, tomorrow. But my issue too is I have a hard time setting a stop. Like I want to get all my work done and not have it carry over. And sometimes that means I'm getting home really late, missing dinner. That's one thing I need to get better about, my boundary of saying, this is my stop time, and now I'm going to go do family time. Do you have any tips on that?
It's similar, right? Because I have the similar thing where at the end you're like, okay, I've finished, but I'm only finished part of my day. Now the second half. And that's the second half of the day. So although you felt as if you've accomplished something, you now look at that second half and you see anxiety because there's so much to do. And it's not as if this work that you have to do, which is the charting, responding to messages. And some of these messages can be 3 messages from the same person, but now it's added up. So instead of it being 40, there are 43 messages, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, I have 43 messages. So some things that I do, one is I think about the principle, Parkinson's law. I use that a lot. And really, for those who are not familiar with it, it really states that the time that you allot to something mentally is really the time that, for some strange reason, the atmosphere, the world, and science puts it all together and you complete it within that time frame. It's really weird. It happens very, very, very well. So I start to invoke Parkinson's law when I have to use my charts, because I'm like, I am going to leave by this time. And it works. Like 90% of the time, it works in getting my tasks done within that time. The other thing too is entering into that task. I love the fact that you said, now I'm going to really use that pause technique before I enter into that task. Because using that technique, it prepares you, because you're already anxious going in. But when you're going in with a state of calm, focus, and tackle, it's almost like battle. Like, okay, I'm ready for battle and I get this done because I'm now in a frame of mind where it is zone. I'm zoned in. That plus using Parkinson's law are ways that you can really get things done in a timely manner. And you are less prone to your mindset, but we're so tired. Oh my gosh, why do we have to keep doing this? But because we've already taken the break and we brought ourselves into a mindset of like, we are getting this done. And why? Why am I getting this done? And that's one thing too, that a lot of those who have to do charting, your reason as to why am I trying to finish this? I think that one of our lovely colleagues, Dr. Mary, she talks about that. Where it's just like, well, what is my why? Why am I finishing this on time? I'm doing this because I want to get home to my family. So when that becomes my why, then there are less things that will distract me. So my phone, ding, 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 I'm not going to listen to it. Why? I'm zoned in. I want to get this done. And I use that plus Parkinson's law and my why and taking that break and zoning in as my 3 ways to get this tasks completed.
Yeah, if I don't give myself like, I'm going to spend 30 minutes on social media or doing this post, like if I don't give myself a time, it's an hour and a half later for sure, because time just goes by. But yeah, I love that. Give yourself a set time. I try to do my notes, give myself like an hour to do my notes, and I put the phone away. I'm zoned in. I'm not trying to multitask, because that was one thing I used to multitask all the time. Check an email, do this. What I've realized is I'm distracted and I'm not doing any of them very well. It actually takes longer. So yeah, putting away those distractions, zoning in, knock it out, give yourself a time limit, and in general, you'll hit it for most days. So those are all great advice. We've been talking about what we as individuals can do if we're experiencing burnout, but do our employers, does corporate America, do they have any role in this? And so, and causing this, any role in helping us, the employees?
Absolutely. So when we talk about burnout, you're right. There is the portion where the employees are dealing with it, but the corporations as a whole, they do have a role in this, and they also have a role in helping. Now, the biggest thing that we need from our corporations is to be able to be more active and a little bit more proactive at the same time. There are steps that they have in place when they'll say like, oh, well, I have an employee assistance program to help our employees, but how many of your employees are taking advantage of the employee assistance program or even aware of what exists? So workshops, and that's where I come into play, and me and my team, in that we provide the workshops to help to reduce the stress, to provide the tools that these workers need, the tools that the management needs. The management needs to be able to recognize within their team when there's signs of stress and burnout that are impending. So you might start noticing the productivity is going down if you're a corporation or a team lead, a manager. And then when you're doing your one-to-ones, which is a great way in order to offset burnout, is doing one-to-ones and getting the feedback. And it's unsolicited feedback. You really just ask and then you let them talk. And it's without judgment and it's without you interrupting and said, well, this is the reason why we do this. No, like let the employees talk and say how they feel. Now, when you start hearing things about favoritism and you hear, negative feedback, like on a consistent basis, that means that there's some level of distress that's going on within that industry or even within your team. And that's the time that you need to address it full on. There are other ways too, like providing not just like monetary is great, monetary gratitude things, giving bonuses, that of course is important, especially when we have an economy where, a lot of things are very expensive. But acknowledgement is also very important, but true acknowledgement, not the, oh, thank you so much, truly acknowledging, like, why do you think that I'm a great employee? Well, thank you for stepping up during that time when we needed you for this. And as a result, I would love to be able to give you this particular XYZ. Acknowledging the team members during your meetings at the beginning. And it's acknowledging them for specific reasons. And even acknowledgement that comes from the top all the way down. I didn't realize that my CEO even knew my name. Like, wow, I'm getting a personalized email from them and not from the team overall, where it's just this general email. And then there are different things too in that you provide training, provide the workshops to the team. Let them know these are ways that you can offset the stress and you can offset burnout. And this is what burnout looks like. If you're seeing this, these are the things to do, because just having great workers leave, it's very, very costly to that company. It's a 4-to-1 cost to bring in a new employee. And then you have the stress of that employee's job, that the one who left is now divided amongst those who are still there, and their levels go up. So you can see how you can just start having a cascade.
Yeah, so corporations, companies need to care, if not for the humanitarian side, the fiscal side, right? That it's more expensive to bring on more people and train. And yeah, like we don't want to lose kind, caring, competent doctors to burnout. We don't want all our amazing teachers to leave because they're burnout. Like we want these people helping. We need them in our society. So I do think we need to kind of really take a good hard look at this and our expectations of people and what's realistic and what's not. And yeah, sometimes it seems very like superficial, like, Dr. Day, you get a, mass email and a $5 Starbucks card or something like that. Like, it's like, I can get my own Starbucks, but what would be more meaningful is, like a personalized note or something more specific than just a mass email to everyone, right?
It's not personal.
Exactly.
This is another thing that happens, and maybe some people in the company feel great about it, maybe others don't. But when you do this, hey, for this day, instead of me sending you this thing fiscally, we've donated this to this charity of our choice. But suppose that charity doesn't mean anything to me. So it might be great for you because we know that for you as an organization, this is a great write-off. but that charity might not mean to me. What about if you give it to me to donate to my charity of choice?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love that.
They're just those slight subtleties that really can help to enhance the connection between the employee and their organization. So
I think I have a pretty amazing office. We have an awesome staff. They've been with us a long time. And one of the things that we do for everyone's birthday is we always sing happy birthday. We get a card for them, and everyone in the office writes a little personal note to them. I mean, it's just a sentence or not even a full sentence, right? But and included with a little gift card. I think that's really special. I always look forward to my birthday when I get that. And for the holidays, that the staff used to pool money and buy a gift for my partner and myself. And what we told him was like, it's very generous and we really don't want that gift per se. But what we asked them to do is to write us a note and tell us why they like being here or what they like about working here. And I save those cards, and I'm not a saver, but they're really special. And I really look forward to, around the holidays, opening up my box of 20 different cards and I can read. And, it's like stuff like that. Or a patient will send me a letter saying, you really made a difference. You took the extra time with me. And I so appreciate that, right? Like that makes my day. And that doesn't cost any money. It's personal. And those things make such a difference. So just to be mindful of doing that ourselves. And then also, when we get that feedback, it can really make all the difference. It can turn your day around, your week around.
absolutely. And I know some people might be listening to this and are like, well, I don't have the time to do all of that. Well, you start from the top and you sprinkle it down. You know what I mean? So the CEO, yes, you might not have, but that's why you have managers and that's why you have those on the team. And, so those who are closest to the people, you can have them be able to help you to do that. Because when you have someone that's close to, like, you and I, we're close, and I can tell the person at the top, like, oh, this is why Mina is so great, blah, 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 blah. And then you're writing this and you're like, hey, this is what people are think about you. These are what your team members think about you. And it's coming from the CEO. It means just as much, to hear that. So you might not be able to do it, but you can get it from those who are closest to that person, but still disseminate the information that way.
I've noticed my son's love language is more gifts, like little gifts, tiny, doesn't need to be expensive or even cost anything. And my daughter loves little notes. So I will leave her like a little note every now and then in her bathroom because I'm usually gone before they wake up, saying, I hope you have a great day. Or to your spouse, like send a note to your spouse saying, hey, I know you had a rough week. I really appreciate you taking care of the kids while I was out of town or I had to work late. So these things work with your spouse too. And that's probably honestly more important, right? In the big picture.
Yes, because once you have that home, you have that safe space, and you have that place where you know that you're being nurtured and all of you's loved, like what more can one want?
I could talk to you forever. I love this. If you could just give the listeners like your top 3 tips dealing with burnout, I would love to just like boil it down, your top 3 takeaways.
So top 3 things when you're dealing with burnout. Number 1 is to recognize it. So recognize those 3 Ds that's happening: the depletion, detachment, and the depersonalization. Number 2 is to go back and find ways to infuse joy within your day. Find ways to bring that joy within your day. Number 3 is start the day infusing, where we say that you are building your day up, and you can use what we call our morning or wake up routines to do that, where you are not immediately looking at your phone, you're not immediately looking at social media. You're going to listen to something positive, either positive affirmation. If you're religious, you're going to read your religious book, and then you'll do some type of movement to really just strengthen you and physically, mentally, and spiritually to enter your day. And then our bonus is, if you are having a stressful portion in your day, incorporate your pause technique, which is the P, it's to literally pause. A, acknowledge your stressor. You understand how that stress is affecting you. S, set a self-care goal. And E, execute it.
Such great advice. And people may be saying, isn't this a skin-focused podcast? But right, like when you're burnt out, when you're stressed, when you have anxiety, your cortisol levels are up. And I think we all know you do not look and feel your best. So being able to handle this burnout and get some self-help and get some tools is so, so important. And we can't ignore this because we're going to lose a lot of good workers, a lot of good people. So I love what you're doing. And where can listeners find you, follow you if they want to reach out and maybe have you come speak to one of their companies?
So I'm very, very, very active on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn, which is Dr. Tamara, Tamara, last name Beckford, B as in boy, Eckford. So very active there. And also everything and all thing about Dr. Tamara Beckford you can find on my website, which is yourcaringdocs.com. So that's URCARINGDOCS.com. You can connect with me there. I have a work with me link. So if you'd like to have me as a speaker, to come and speak at your event on stress and burnout, if you'd like to have me host a workshop for your company, we can do all of that through connecting through that website. And you can see all the different things that I do on my Your Caring Docs page.
Yes, wonderful. Well, I will include all of that in the show notes. And you are just such a positive person and you're such a great speaker. So yeah, people would be lucky to have you come and your energy is wonderful. So I've really enjoyed speaking with you. I know this is such a valuable episode. I really appreciate you coming and we'll see everyone next week.